Hi there, this is Professor Innes again, and you are now on Module 10, and that's on Realism by Plato. So, to make it straightforward and clear, you're still in the subject of metaphysics, but now we are going into this area called ontology, which is very difficult to describe, so we could describe it as being that part of metaphysics which delves into the area of being, the area of which we call here that understanding of where all particulars reside and how we understand those particulars. So it's a world of existence. Again, it's incredibly vague, it's very unclear. So what we'll do is we will say here that we have all these particular objects lying around, pens, chairs, houses and everything such as those tangible physical objects. And thereafterwards, we have to make sense of all these trillions and upon trillions of different objects, and what we do is we put them into classifications. So in ontology, the understanding of existence, of being, is that these categorizations are called universals. So we have the universals of horses, we have the universals of cows, we have the universals of pens, houses, and so forth and so on. And we think to ourselves, right, that's perfectly reasonable. To understand the world, we categorize things in these universals. But we philosophers think to ourselves, right, okay, this is, again, it's straightforward, but what we need to ask is, was it we human beings who created these categories, or was it to do with it just being these categories being in existence before we human beings came into being? So are they independent realities, or are they concepts of the mind? So John Locke, as you're going to find out, is just our example at the moment, considers that they are concepts of the mind, and whereas Plato thinks they are independent realities. When you get on to George Berkeley, you'll have a different argument with him. But for the time being, we'll just use Locke, John Locke, and Plato. So Plato has this notion of realism, and what we have here with realism at the moment, and you can understand with Locke in the next module, and Berkeley in the module after that, is an understanding of these universals. So what you're going to see with Plato is that basic understanding that these universals are independent realities. You're going to see that within and particularly in the videos. There's one particular video which I think is narrated by Orson Welles. It sounds like him. I'm not quite sure if it is him or not, but that goes very nicely to this understanding that these universals are independent realities. What we see on Earth are misty imitations of this reality, and we've got to use our intelligence to understand this independent reality as much as possible. And it does place a lot of problems, in the sense that, do we understand this realism? Do we see this realism? Or are we just living in some dream world? For Plato, it's understood that the majority of us live in a dream world. We don't see reality at all. We keep making mistakes. We put our prejudices and personal viewpoints in the way of this understanding of reality, and end up with these strange concepts, as we might call them, whereby I have made my choice based upon my feelings, my opinions, and that's the end of the matter. So I've got it wrong, but I don't know it. They are the cave dwellers. The people on the outside of the cave are the ones who've got it right. They put aside their prejudices and they look at reality and see things for what they are. Now, how many people, again, we've asked, how many people are in this outside world of seeing the real world is up for you to think about. If I had to put a number on it, I would say Plato would consider maybe 3% of the population have this capability. It's up to you to think if there are more than that, but you have to think to yourself, how many people out there are living in this cave world. We've got this election at the moment. You've got to think to yourself, with both parties, Republican and Democrat, acting like they're in some form of I don't know, some medieval contest. We might say that politics at the moment is in the cave. We might say all those people in the House of Representatives and the House and the Senate are acting like they're in some form of conflict, some form of battle, and they don't really know what they're doing there to start with. They don't know why they're in the political world. For Plato, being in politics means that you bring about or you administer the clear form of justice. I just don't have a feeling here that we've got these people who have that in mind. It's a war between Republicans and Democrats, and we see that happening. Now, I'm not saying that's the actual case here, but I will definitely say that it seems that way. It could be contended that we have a war of parties rather than parties getting together to administrate justice. So again, that will be an example of who's in the cave. So all these politicians are cave dwellers. So it's just an example. You can look around to see all the other cave dwellers out there in the world and think, yeah, well, they don't see or have any chance of this seeing of reality. Right, so with that in mind, think about your journal entry. So think about 3 examples whereby you could consider that these people are not living in the real world. And I picked upon the politicians as being those who are not in the real world. They don't see reality for what it is. They can't see it. So you could have you could use that as a guiding light. But think about 3 others, which would be examples of people who do not live in the real world. They live in the cave. Others as well. You could say here, if I was being not very charitable to people who play too much, I'll say too much, video games. Do they live in the real world? It's not just that they are in fantasy worlds, but does this affect their view of the world there afterwards? Is it the case that there's no chance of seeing the real world? So don't use that example or the example of the politicians, but think about 3 whereby it is possibly the case these people are cave dwellers. They do not understand the real world. And you'll get this understanding from doing the reading and also that particular video I mentioned. Okay, so please ask me any questions you need, and if you need any clarification for anything in the course, please do let me know. Okay, thanks a lot, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.